I'm Councillor Phillips, Chairman of the committee. I'll make a few introductions. On my right is Solomon Agoto, our legal advisor for today. On his right is Steve King, who will be making the presentations for the planning applications. To his right is Steve Ashdown, the Head of Development Management, our planning advisor for today. Round the corner is Anne Biggs, the Assistant Director of Planning, and to her right is Ian Gledhill from West Sussex County Council Highways. On my left is my chairman, Vice Chairman, Councillor Sweatman, and behind it in the corners our Member of Democratic Services, who will be taking the minutes and working the technology for today. Right, so we move on to item 1. To note substitutions in accordance with Council Rule 4. I'm not aware of any substitutions. Sorry. Yeah, okay, sorry, not aware of any substitutions. To receive apologies for absence from Councillor Wood. To receive declaration of interest from members in respect of any matter on the agenda. Would members please use the technology to indicate if they have any? Right, I see none. Item 4, to agree by general affirmation the minutes of the previous meeting held on 19th of June 2025. Are members happy I sign those as a true record? Thank you. To consider any items that the Chairman agrees to take as urgent business, I have none. So we now move on to the substantive items recommended for approval. DM 250014. Land west of Turners Hill Road and south of Huntsland. One thing I would say just before I ask Steve King to make the presentation, I think most members will be aware, but for members of the public, this actually was put forward in the revised district plan as one site, but the developers come forward and split the site into two. So they are adjoining sites, but were the one. The one application in the district plan, which is currently under suspension. So if I could ask Steve King to make the presentation on the site, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just before I begin with the presentation, just draw members' attention to the update sheet. There's a couple of changes in respect of the content of the report. So there's a few corrections to paragraph numbers that have gone awry. In terms of substantive items, there's a tweak to condition 30 and 31, and also additional conditions regarding the parameter plans, and a condition to deal with the allotments, and again at the end just corrections to a couple of the plans that are referred to in the report. So to go through the application, the proposal seeks outline planning permission for the erection of up to 200 dwellings and associated infrastructure, including new access points from Turners Hill Road at Crawley Down. And it's the means of access that's to be determined at the outline stage, with landscaping, appearance, layout and scale to be determined in subsequent reserved matters application. So this is the site of the application here, outlined in red. So as you can see, it lies on the west side of Turners Hill Road in Crawley Down. In terms of planning policy, the site's within the countryside as defined in the district plan. As the Chairman's mentioned, it's part of a larger site that's proposed to be allocated for development under policy DPA 9 in the submission draft plan, which is currently examination, and I'll come on to that in a bit more detail later. The site's described in section 9 of the report. Essentially, the northern boundary is marked by trees and hedging here. You've also got the public right-of-way that runs along here. Western boundary marked again by trees and hedging, and there's also a public right-of-way that runs alongside the boundary. Southern side, again, extensive tree and hedge planting, and then you've got the Worth Way running east-west here. And trees, there's a wooded area here, and here is residential property with its garden and paddock land. There's a fall in levels from north to south down here, and a change in levels, again going down from south to north. This slide just shows some of the constraints around the site and things that are referred to in the report. So the dark green cross-hatching is various areas of ancient woodland that are around the site. So this is the site of the current planning application that we're looking at. The purple lines are various public rights of way that run around the site. So that goes through the centre, that runs along the western boundary. And the red buildings are the listed buildings that are referred to in the committee report. In terms of the submission draft district plan, this is an extract. So the area in pink shows the proposed site allocation in the submission draft district plan. So that's DPA 9. The black line in this sort of greyed out area here is the existing built-up area boundary of Crawley Down, and the red line represents the proposed built-up area boundary. So in terms of the application before committee today, this is the illustrative master plan of the site. The details of what's proposed are set out in section 10 of the report, so I won't go through it in too much detail. As I say, this is an illustrative plan to show how the site could be developed, but with the two means of access to be determined at this stage. So you've got proposed access at the southern end of the site on Turners Hill Road here, opposite Vicarage Road, and then a second access serving the central field parcel. So you've got the residential element of the site located at the southern end, and this area at the far south and the western side is all open space. So just in terms of the parameter plans that are referred to, this is the land use parameter plan. So the yellow areas are the proposed developed areas, in effect the residential areas. That represents the new access points, and the remainder of the site is green infrastructure, so undeveloped. That's just a building heights parameter plan, and it shows that the site would be up to 2.5-storey buildings within the site on those developed areas. And again, a similar plan just shows the green infrastructure. So it's that central field there, field 5, would be developed, green infrastructure around. And at the southern end, it's these areas that are proposed to have the physical development, with the remainder being green. This area, as says in the report, is going to be an area of open space designed to function like a SANG, with SANG characteristics, although it won't actually be an official SANG, but that's set out in the report. Bit more detail. This is the proposed southern access point into the site. So as you can see, opposite Vicarage Road, and what's also proposed with the application as well as the new access is a new signalised crossing to the south of that, and some off-site highway works in terms of tactile paving for revised crossing points here and down here. The central access point is a simple T-junction, and then you'd have a section of new pavement to link up with the existing signalised pedestrian crossing that's just to the south of the public right-of-way at Huntslands. And this site just shows some more of the proposed off-site works. So proposed pavement widening on the eastern side of Turns Hill Road. Various tactile crossing points along Vicarage Road, and works on a section of Worth Way to make improvements to that. And this slide just shows the proposed drainage. The final details of that would be reserved by condition, but essentially it's a series of swales and suds features in the blue there, with the site draining off to existing water courses at the greenfield rate. So that's the broad principles of the drainage. And just a couple of photos to show members the site. So these are within the site, the central, the main area of the site looking to the north. So those are existing buildings by the public right-of-way. This is from the public right-of-way, then looking back down to the south into the site, so you can see the falling levels there. Views from Turner's Hill Road, just by the bridge in Worth Way. So this is the existing field gate access. So it'll be a new access point going in, enlarged access point going in at this point here.
Sorry, it's very difficult to hear. Could you put the microphone up a bit, please?
Yeah, and these are views towards the public right-of-way at Huntslands, and that's the existing crossing. So you'd have a new section of paving down here to go to that proposed new access for the central field. And these are just some views within the central field, so that's looking south. This is right at the far end of that central field, the existing pathway that would be used to provide a pedestrian link to the far southern part of the site, and that's a view looking to the nearest property within that central field. So if I go back to the illustrative layout plan. So in terms of the assessment of the application, I won't go through it in huge detail because it is in the committee report. I'll just flag up the main points for members. The legal framework, as we know, for assessing applications, it's set out in section 11 of the report, but planning legislation holds that the application should be determined in accordance with the development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. So for this part of Mid-Sussex, the development plans, the district plan, site allocations, development plan document, and the Crawley Down neighbourhood plan. The MPPF is an important material consideration because that's government policy on how the planning system should operate. So in terms of the general principle, that's dealt with in section 12.2 of the report. So the starting point is that the application site falls outside the built-up area of Crawley Down as defined in the adopted district plan. As such, the site's in the countryside. The application's for a major housing development in the countryside that's not on a site allocated for development in the current district plan, and therefore, whilst the report makes it clear that the application complies with many of the policies in the current district plan, when viewed as a whole, there is a conflict with the development plan. That's not the end point, because as we've said, you also have to look at other material considerations. And as members will know, at the present time, the council can't demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply, And what that means is that the what's called the tilted balance in paragraph 11D of the MPPF applies, and that's set out in full in para 1214 of the report. But I think that the key point for decision making is that where there are no relevant development plan policies, or the policies which are most important for determining the application are out of date, which that's the position we're in, we should be granting planning permission unless any adverse impacts of doing so would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits when assessed against policies the MPPF taken as a whole, having particular regard to key policies for directing development to sustainable locations, making effective use of land, securing well-designed places, providing affordable homes, either individually or in combination. So the adverse effects have to significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. That's the tilted balance, and that's how the application has been assessed in the report. As I've said, the site is proposed to be allocated for development under policy DPA 9 in the submission draft district plan. However, because of the current status of that submission draft district plan, that has limited weight, and so the application hasn't been assessed against that proposed policy. It's been assessed against the policies in the adopted district plan. So that's the broad principle. In terms of the actual details, again, they're in the report, so I'll go through them very briefly. Transport matters are dealt with para 1226 of the report. As I said, it's access to be determined at this stage. You'll see from the report, the local highway authority have no objection to the two proposed access points and the associated highway works. In terms of the impact on the road network, the applicant's transport assessment has looked at the proposed junctions and the number of other junctions together with other committed development, and the conclusion is that the impact from this development on those junctions wouldn't be severe. And as members know, that the test of a severe impact is set out in the MPPF, and that is a high bar. You'll also see in the report that National Highways, who are responsible for the trunk road network, have also commented on the application and have no objection in relation to the impact on junction 23 of junction 10 of the M23. Landscape matters are dealt with paragraph 12.8.1 of the report. You'll see that the fields selected for development are the least sensitive within the site. As the report acknowledges, there'll clearly be an impact on the countryside from changing a greenfield site into a housing development, but this is mitigated by the screening that's proposed and existing to a reasonable extent. And as the report says, because of the 5-year land supply position, policy DP12 does attract reduced weight at the moment. In terms of heritage assets, that's dealt with in paragraph 12.102 of the report. The conclusion in relation to those listed buildings where there is harm, officers' view is that harm classed as less substantial in the MPPF is outweighed by the public benefits in this instance, even when you give those that harm significant weight. In terms of design and layout and housing mix, as I say, these are illustrative, and we think the applicants have demonstrated that you can achieve this amount of development satisfactorily on the site. All matters relating to sustainable design, they're set out in the report at para 12.149. Final details of that would all come through at the reserve matter stage. You'll see the scheme provides 30% affordable housing, which is policy compliant, and also 2% self-build. In terms of impacts on residential amenity, from the illustrative plans, we don't consider there would be significant harm to any of the existing occupiers around the site. But again, that would need to be reassessed at a subsequent reserve matter stage when we have the final details of the layout. Trees and ecology, that's all in the report. You'll see there's no objection from the council's tree officer or the council's ecologist. The site will be providing in excess of the 10% BNG that's mandatory for this development, which is positive in the planning balance. I've gone briefly through the proposed drainage and how that's set out. But you'll see that there's no objection from the lead local flood authority to the proposed means of drainage of the site. In terms of infrastructure, that's dealt with para 12.265 of the report. As members will know, developers are only required to mitigate the impacts of their development, and all requests for infrastructure contributions have to meet community infrastructure levy regulations, the SIL regs. With regard to how we're calculating those contributions, you'll see a slight change in this report to what we've done in the past, in that we're now using Appendix 5 from the submission draft district plan rather than the Development and Infrastructure SPD. The reasons for that are set out in the committee report, but in a nutshell, I think that the figures derived from Appendix 5 of the submission draft district plan are up to date and fully reflect the costs of providing new infrastructure, and therefore as officers we consider that using that methodology to calculate the figures is appropriate and meets the tests of policy DP20 and the SIL regs. In terms of the Ashdown Forest, as I've mentioned, this area, open space, will function as a SANG, although it won't officially be a SANG. It's only this southeastern corner of the site that's actually within the 7 kilometre zone of the Ashdown Forest. So with that in place, we think visitor pressure on the Ashdown Forest will be mitigated. Natural England are happy with that approach. So in terms of the overall assessment, the conclusion is set out in section 13 of the committee report. I've gone through the tilted balance, and ultimately it's the officer's view that in this case the adverse impacts of the proposal don't significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. The benefits are all set out in the committee report. You've got the benefits of providing housing, 30% affordable housing, the economic benefits of the development, and as I say, we think that those are very important considerations. And for those reasons, the application is recommended for approval, subject to the conditions in the report, the update sheet, and the completion of a satisfactory legal agreement to secure the affordable housing and infrastructure contributions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Steve. Right, we move on to the speakers, and just to remind the speakers, they are limited to 3 minutes. These 3 minutes will start when you start speaking. I will try and give you an indication after 2 minutes that you've got 1 minute left, and after 3 minutes I will say that the time is up. We'd ask you to wind up in 1 sentence, please. If anyone does persist in going on too long, then we will ask for the sound to be turned off. So the first speaker on behalf of Worth Parish Council is Councillor Williams. So if you'd like to take your seat there. And as I say, the 3 minutes will start when you start speaking.
Thank you for letting me speak to you all today. The residents of Crawley Down were not enamoured when a circa 350 home site was allocated on the side of the village in the proposed district plan. However, the things then moved on. With no plan currently in place and no 5-year housing land supply, we in the north of the district find ourselves in a particularly precarious position. Our proximity to Gatwick makes us attractive to speculative developers with little protection from them. This is made worse by having Tandridge as our neighbour. Thus, we find ourselves looking at the proposed development on the land west of Turners Hill Road in a new light. Perhaps we form a new category. Neither NIMBYs nor YIMBYs, we have become the FIMBYs, forced in our backyard. Like it or not, in the current climate, this development would almost certainly be one at appeal. Such a legal battle, if lost, would result in development being forced upon us, costing the council taxpayer a fortune while losing Crawley Down's residents benefits from Section 106 funding. So we are left in a position that if we have to have it, then we require a high-quality scheme which does its best to fit into our village. WPC's Planning Committee believes that Waits has worked well with the community to try to achieve this. They have listened to residents, taken on board issues such as natural springs, and made amendments where possible to meet concerns. There still are fears over access, and we would ask MSDC to listen to local people while working closely with West Sussex to ensure that access onto Turners Hill Road respects the needs of residents and enables traffic flow to continue safely. Crawley Down is a village that has had well-documented issues with utilities. Power cuts are frequent. 2.5 years ago, the village was forced to rely on bottled water due to a water outage, and there are question marks over the quality of sewers in some parts of the village. We ask MSDC's planning department to keep a careful eye with the developer and the utility companies to ensure that the village does not suffer further due to any new houses being built. Waits has worked hard with the Crawley Down community in drawing up its Section 106 ideas. Crawley Down Village Centre, sports facilities, community centres are all in need of investment. We ask MSDC to join with Waits and ensure that any Section 106 funding is delivered to the assets that need them so the village reaps the benefits. There is a possibility that once planning permission is granted, this site will change owner. It is essential planning conditions placed on the developer guarantee that the new owner delivers everything that Waits has agreed. WPC's Planning Committee has 3 voting options: object, support or defer to officer. We voted to defer this scheme to MSDC's planning officers. We hope you do us justice and ensure this scheme is a success, fits into our village and brings benefits to all.
Thank you very much. Right, the next speaker is Dr. Thring. Again, I would remind you that you've got 3 minutes, and I will try and indicate when there's a minute left.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm Dr. James Thring. I was a strategic planner at the Department of the Environment on the strategy for the South East, and this designated a strategic gap between Crawley and East Grinstead to preserve the natural environment and the farming from urban sprawl. It provided for growth in the Crawley-Gatwick growth area to reap economies of scale in public expenditure on services and to help consolidate business. The strategy was adopted by the London and South East councils and as a broad, long-term framework for planning decisions. It has not been superseded, as far as I know. As chair of the Rofant Society, I speak for about 100 or so residents who want this strategy adhered to avoid expansion, apart from natural increase, which is very small. As a Rofant resident since 1955, living at the foot of Huntsland Hill, that's on the west side, we are concerned about flooding from impervious concrete areas. We've no faith in the retention ponds, which were not described but are on that map. These silt up. They still need an overflow channel in case they overflow, and they may even slide or burst in freak storms, overflowing into the stream, which is a very small stream which runs through the back of our places and down to the fishing ponds towards Rofant House, and indeed the lake at Rofant House as well, with possible pollution from car washing and so on. and they will also wipe out the great crested newts evident in the pond at the foot of the site. We therefore request the Council at least impose an a priori condition to build and run a pumping station to pump water and sewage back up to the main drain on Turners Hill Road, which
1 minute
are
left.
in need of repair. We also object to the application. It detracts from the rural character of the area. The brick boxes are out of keeping with existing buildings. Disproportionate influx of about 1,000 people with children will disturb the quiet neighbourhood, bringing noise, litter, antisocial behaviour, vandalism, trespassing, etc., will overload existing services. Local roads are unsuitable for the extra traffic. Local farms and farmland must be preserved for food production and reliability, especially in times of crisis as is now looming. In conclusion, we find it disgraceful that this application is recommended for permission, acceding to developers and national government pressures when planners and members are supposed to be protecting local interests. Housing expansion is taking valuable farmland and encouraging mass immigration and potential social unrest. As a positive
Wrap up in 1
alternative-
minute, in one sentence, please.
my last sentence is, as a positive alternative, I've suggested to government and Sussex District Council, it would be more cost effective to house new populations in new towns, in regions needing investment on reclaimed land rather than agricultural land, where everyone would be happy.
Thank you very much. Right, the third speaker is Joanna Willington. Again, your 3 minutes will start when you start speaking.
Thank you, Chairman and Committee, for inviting us to talk today. I'm a resident of Crawley Down. I formally object to the proposals 0014 and 0016 because their local impact is inaccurately represented in the documents. Documents submitted by the developer have data that is incorrect and data that through omission is misleading. I'll give examples, but highlight now that I've read errors in just a small number of documents that I've read. There are hundreds of documents, right, and I've only read a few. And these are some of the examples I can share. So I object to the proposal that claims to be sustainable have manageable traffic impact when these claims are based on incorrect data. Okay, starting with data about the descriptions, a sustainable development and a 20-minute neighbourhood. Number one, walking times to local destinations. The estimates cannot include the time to walk the part of the journey on the site. The site's 700 metres wide, east to west. Two, public transport, bus timetable information. Average bus time to the local town is stated as 20 minutes. It's actually 27 to 30 minutes if you take a bus from the bus stop near the site, not in the centre of the village. Number three, cycle distance and time estimates. Distance quoted as approximately 5 kilometres to Three Bridges Station. This is wrong, it's 7.6 kilometres. Number four, quoting again, a 15-minute cycle ride to Three Bridges Station. This is wrong, the estimate is 22 minutes. Moving on to misleading traffic impact. Number one. A junction at Turners Hill would become most severely impacted. This is acknowledged. There's junction mitigation. It shows 2 lanes flowing equally across 2 box junctions outside a fire station. This proposal cannot be a reality. Number 2, the proposal quotes a development with 350 dwellings near Leeds. There was an increased wait time there of plus 50% and was not considered impactful. Note, in real terms, that delay was an increase of just 54 seconds. Far less than the 15 minutes I had to sit waiting to travel 300 metres, travelling west to east at Turners Hill. Finally, covering ecology. The plans include removal of approximately 200 metres of hedgerow and creation of new woodland areas. Thank you. Place Services, so the ecological consultants, outline the difficulty of creating lowland mixed deciduous woodland in their June response. So this questions, okay, is there actually biodiversity net gain? Can we actually be sure? So in summary, I've highlighted some inaccuracies with some of the data around travel impact, ecological impact, and the claimed sustainability. On this basis, I object.
Thank you very much. Steve, do you want to hear the rest of the speakers before you pass comment? Ian, are you happy to wait till all the speakers have finished? Thank you very much. Okay, we now move to the speakers in favour, and the first speaker is Dave Connor, who's the chairman of Crawley Down Football Club. And again, the 3 minutes will start when you start speaking.
My name is David Connor and I'm here as the chairman of Crawley Down Gatwick Football Club. We are an FA England accredited community club established in 1993, which today sits at the heart of the Worth community, which includes both Copthorne and Turners Hill. I have lived in the Worth community for over 45 years, run a local business and am an active member of the community with the Football Club, Haven Centre Committee and the trustee of the Copthorne Social Club, amongst other interests. From just one team, Crawley Down Gatwick have grown into a club and now supports a full pathway for boys and girls aged 5 to 18, as well as multiple adult teams, including our soon-to-be launched women's team, a total of 32 teams playing and training. Our mission is simple but powerful, to make football accessible to everyone. Today we provide opportunities for over 550 local children and adults to play and enjoy football. More than 700 people actively involved in the club and around 2,000 parents connected to our youth section, and never mind to mention the 5,000 spectators over the season. But now the club finds itself at a crossroads with significant demand from our community. The opportunity exists to bring football to a greater number of children and adults, but in order to support and sustain the growth of the club, we need to access an all-weather surface. I am therefore here today to support the application, as it gives the club the opportunity to benefit from the Section 106 funding towards the delivery of a 3G pitch at the Haven Sports Field. We are grateful to Worth Parish Council for recognising the need and proposing it to the Wakes development through their consultation of the emerging local plan, with Mid Sussex District Council recognising its importance by including it in their infrastructure delivery plan. The 3G pitch would be a game changer, allowing us to host more matches and training sessions all year round, unaffected by the weather, and crucially open the doors to even more players of all ages and backgrounds. It would also be our intention to share the facilities with Crawley Down Village School, as well as the other schools in the Worth community, as well as many other local community groups in the Worth community. Whilst the Section 106 funding from this development is not significant, it wouldn't cover the full cost of the pitch. Nonetheless, it represents a crucial first step with the possibility of future funds from other local developments. And with additional funding sources available to us, the project is achievable and it would be transformative to the club. Whilst I'm not here to comment on the proposals themselves, I would like to add that Wakes have been extremely collaborative throughout the process, meeting myself, senior leaders of the football club and the Haven Centre on several occasions, whilst also helping with the understanding the progress, the next steps of the club. This pitch would not just serve the club, but the entire community, creating a lasting legacy, boosting participation in sport and bringing football to the Haven Centre,
please,
and supporting it to the community hub. Thank you for your time, and I hope you all support this opportunity to make football accessible to more people in our community.
Thank you very much. Right, so the second speaker in favour is James Bevis, Transport Planner. I hope I got the surname correct. You did. Right, again, 3 minutes starts when you start speaking.
Good afternoon. My name is James Bevis and I'm a senior partner at iTransport. We have been advising the applicant on transport matters. This is not the first time I have addressed this committee on development schemes on the western side of Crawley Down. My involvement with this area dates back nearly 15 years. We've approached matters with the rigour and seriousness that is needed, given that transport matters are a key concern to some of the local community. We engaged with the County Council at the earliest possible opportunity, both as part of promotion of the scheme through the local plan process and for this planning application. We agree with the conclusion of the local plan evidence base that this is a suitable site for residential development. For this application, our discussions with the County Council have ensured that we have provided the correct assessment that covers the correct issues in the correct level of detail. Traffic impacts have been tested thoroughly. The additional traffic generated by the development will not make them noticeably or unacceptably worse, which is the relevant test in policy terms. Highway capacity improvements are therefore not necessary nor appropriate. It is the improvements to walking, cycling and public transport that will be fundamental to the success of this scheme. These improvements will capitalise on the sustainable location. They are set out in the committee report and include connections with the existing formal crossings of Turners Hill Road, walking and cycling connections between the north and south sites to provide a new continuous link to the west of Crawley Down, widening of substantial sections of the existing footway on Turners Hill Road, new crossings of Turners Hill Road, including a new signalised pedestrian and cyclist crossing to provide a much better connection across the road and between the existing bus stops, improvements to those bus stops, improvements to the crossings of numerous existing side roads. These will provide drop curbs to make it much easier for those less mobile or pushing a pushchair to use the footway network. A car club, which will reduce car ownership and car usage by assisting those who do not want to own their own car or cannot afford to do so. Funding of the 272 buses, so they'll operate during periods when they currently do not. Surfacing improvements on the Worth Way. The significant enhancement to sustainable transport provision will be of material benefit to both existing and future residents of Crawley Down. All of this work shows that the proposal is acceptable, but you don't need to take my word for it. Our work has been subject to detailed scrutiny by the County Council and National Highways, both of whom are transport experts and appropriately qualified to advise you on such matters. They are happy that the scheme is acceptable, which is a view shared by your officers, as comprehensively set out in the committee report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, the final speaker in favour is Meryl Baker from Waits Developments.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Meryl Baker and I'm a director at Waits. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today in support of your officer's recommendation to approve this application. The Waits team, as you've heard, have worked collaboratively on the proposals with the district, key stakeholders and local community for many years. We're proud to support the local plan process and contribute to the delivery of much needed new homes. Our involvement in Crawley Down spans over a decade. We understand the local area and community well, having previously brought forward the two adjacent schemes at Wychwood Place and Woods View. Both are now thriving communities. As a family-owned business, now in the fourth generation, legacy and collaboration is at the heart of the Waits family values. We worked particularly closely with the Parish Council, the Haven Centre and Crawley Down Football Club to ensure this scheme not only serves the new residents, but also delivers for the community as a whole. The scheme has been thoroughly tested and importantly comes to you with no statutory consultation objections. I'd like to just highlight a few of the key benefits. 200 net zero carbon ready homes, of which 60 would be affordable, helping to address the nearly 2,000 people on your current housing register. Extensive green open space, with 70% of the land within this proposal safeguarded for green infrastructure. Significant contributions through the 106, not just to the football club, but Haven Centre, Cricket Club, and NHS GP services, just to mention a few. And finally, as James mentioned, significant transport enhancements to improve bus services and include a car club, again, not just for new residents, but the wider community. Through the local plan process, the site was found to be one of the most sustainable and suitable locations for supporting housing needs. And I'd like to draw your attention to paragraph 11.22 and 11.28 of your officer's report in this regard. The Waits team do feel very proud about the collaborative work that's gone into this proposal. It has been a real team effort, not just at Waits, but the invaluable input from the council, key stakeholders, and the wider community. I really do hope you can look to help and support your officers with their recommendation to approve. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, the final speaker is Ward Councillor, Councillor Hitchcock. Sorry, Councillor Gibson, I didn't see you come back into the room. So before Councillor Hitchcock, if Councillor Gibson wishes to speak, but he's speaking on this application, he is speaking as a member of the public and is therefore restricted to the 3 minutes.
Thank you for clarifying that, Chairman. I was expecting to speak for a lot longer, but my dispensation for this item was withdrawn yesterday. I'll say a bit more on that later. You've heard that the gap between East Grinstead and Crawley was a countryside area of development restraint until the introduction of the NPPF. And since then, in the decades since then, over 1,500 houses have been built in that gap, with existing permissions still to be built for a further 1,000. The road infrastructure required to support this growth has not been provided. There have been no new roads, no new schools, capacity issues in all the utilities. The primary healthcare provider is in special measures, and rain brings surface water flooding of both new and existing properties, including those on Wychwood. Already, children moving into new homes in Crawley Down cannot get places in the village primary school. Local roads are rat runs, congestion at all the junctions, and South East Water are going to bring in a hosepipe ban tomorrow. Residents are rightly worried about the impact of another 350 homes, 700 vehicles, and 1,000 residents. As the committee report sets out, this is not an allocated site, and there's conflicts with a number of policies in local plans. If this application had come forward last year, when the council had a 5-year housing land supply, it would have been recommended for refusal. So the current lack means that the presumption of favour of sustainable development is invoked, but the framework's clear that if you, the committee, decide that you consider that the adverse impacts of the development significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits, you should refuse the application. And I'd ask you to consider the following points. Employment. This is a working farm. About a third of its 80 acres are classed as the best quality agricultural land, and the latest tenant is a young farmer. Approving this application will result in the loss of that long-term employment. In my view, that outweighs the short-term employment that benefits the construction of the houses will generate. Housing, the proposed provision does not match the local need for first homes to own and downsize in Crawley Down. The number of affordable homes greatly exceeds the number of households who put the village in their priority on the Common Housing Register. The new affordable homes will be offered to households with preference to live elsewhere, reducing their benefit. The Emerging District Plan, the allocation of the farm is given moderate weight. However, the proposed allocation is for the entire farm as one site, and the Sheila assessments would have been different if they'd been done for the two sides. And on heritage, you'll have seen on your visit, there's the group of non-designated heritage buildings on the southern side of the public footpath. The public benefits are the setting of that on the public footpath, and that means the less than substantial harm will not be outweighed by the benefits of the development. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you very much. And finally, Councillor Hitchcock. Councillor Hitchcock is speaking as a ward member, so he is not constrained by time, although we would obviously ask him to be reasonable, which I'm sure he will be.
Has it gone? Thank you, Chair. This application is about access, and access is what I wish to speak about. I have, throughout the processing of this application made my thoughts very, very clear. I did at the pre-app. My thoughts haven't changed, so I will express them again. I'm looking at the 3 access points to the B2028 with a view to highlighting some of the potential problems that I perceive and villagers perceive. I'm going to start with the southern access, which is at the Worthway Bridge, opposite Vicarage Road. With the proposed traffic light crossing, pedestrian routes to the village via Grange Road and to the bus stops on the B2028 south of the bridge will still have to cross the narrow footpath to the east side of the bridge, which is an intimidating environment. In my view, not suitable for a mum in a pushchair and a toddler, or someone pushing a bicycle or walking a dog. Following the rebuilding of the eastern footpath over the bridge, the carriageway width was reduced to the point where HGVs can no longer pass on the bridge unless wing mirrors overhang the footpath and wheel motion is virtually against the curb. When long HGVs approach from the south, typically these might be waste carriers operating in and out of Cox. They have to swing over the centre line of the road to prevent the trailer hitting the bridge parapet. They then recross back onto a normal line. Residents from the new estate wishing to catch the bus north will need to use the signalled pedestrian crossing over the bridge, pass over the bridge on the intimidating footpath, and then cross the exit of Grange Road, travelling south on a footpath to the south travelling bus stop. They then have to recross the B2028 to the northbound bus stop. The proposed signal light pedestrian traffic lights at the bridge crossing will, in my view, at busy times, AM and PM commute and schools, severely curtail the traffic flow on all 5 elements of the junction, namely B2028 north and south, the Waits New Access, Vicarage Road and Grange Road. I do not know how you would model this junction, and I don't think it's possible to fully model it. Let's talk about the central access south of Huntslands Drive. This access is the least of my worries. It's on a relatively straight piece of road with relatively good sight lines. The only issues I have here is the safety of pedestrians once again. Access is co-located with the new vehicle access, which should be reviewed. There are several gaps on the site side of the access where footpaths could be better arranged to provide continuity to the access to the traffic crossing point. Let's move on to the northern access via Wychwood. The route to the school, health centre, shops and restaurants on Sandy Lane that the signalised crossing serves requires pedestrians to negotiate the dangerous crossing at the top of Sandy Lane to use the pavement on the south side. Unsurprisingly, when you talk to the residents of Wychwood, they prefer to drive to school and to anywhere else. This is a dangerous point. It is completely blind to the crosser crossing north to south and should be further investigated. Although the Highways Authority see nothing wrong with the number of properties served by the existing Wychwood access rising to 220 plus, better solution will be proposed from the northern parcel of traffic to exit through the adjacent Hurst Farm. Local councillors and the parish council have been promoting this solution to both the developer and the district council without success. But Waits have indicated that subject to an approval today, they are still willing to explore the purchase of Hurst Farm and to construct the access road for a potential future development, which would initially serve the northern element of the sites under discussion. This would be a considerably better solution for those 70 homes accessed by Wychwood. This potential offer by Waits needs to be added to a to-do list, as an informative perhaps, should the outline be given permission. Waits in general will be happy for the council to do this. In general, and in my opinion, several problems need to be ironed out, especially at the southern access. West Sussex County Council may have signed off these, but they do not have to use them and experience the peak hour problems for drivers and pedestrians. Queuing on Sandy Lane to access the B2028 with poor sightlines at the entry point. Queuing on Grange Road to access the B2028 with no visibility of what is joining from Vicarage Road. Queuing to get in and out of Wallich Lane to the south of the site, which will have an effect on the bridge traffic light system to the south of the site and to the south of the bridge. Queuing on the B2028 from Hurst Farm to the Duke's Head roundabout at peak times. I've done it many times. It is a pain. The northern crossing also has some pedestrian complications, and they need to be further looked at. I've already mentioned the travelling south blind spot for those wishing to cross Sandy Lane. Waits are likely to have something like an 8 to 10 year association with Crawley Down and Copthorne and wish to be involved in both communities. Waits have made a significant contribution to the communities. But the way in which the elements of the Section 106 agreement have been split by Mid-Sussex District Council will inevitably not allow enough money for some projects to proceed and will also be subject to significant inflation and reduction in value. For Mid-Sussex District Council, this may be the simple way of doing things, but they need to consider the outcome of their actions for their end users. I'm also aware that the total potential value of community Section 106 that can be made available under the SIL regulations has not yet been reached. Waits are prepared to contribute more to worthy projects. I would ask that Mid-Sussex District Council accommodate further requests in the interim period between this potential approval and the detailed submission, and produce a final Section 106 valuation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hickshott. Right, there was quite a lot of points raised there. Steve, would you like to go first?
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. I'll just pick up on a couple of the points, I think. In terms of the highways matters, I'll perhaps leave the detail of that to our colleague Ian Gledhill. So, Councillor Hitchcock, I think, was talking about both applications, so I think we'll concentrate on the application in front of us, the southern one, at this point in time. In terms of the Section 106 funding, I think, as I alluded to and mentioned in the presentation, the actual amount of infrastructure contributions that the developer will be providing for this application is more than if we were using the old supplementary planning document related to infrastructure contributions. And the reason for that, as is set out in the committee report, is because that document was adopted several years ago. The work leading up to that would have been done perhaps a year or so prior to that. So it's several years old. Build costs, as we know, have gone up substantially in the last few years, particularly post-COVID. So in terms of the actual monies that we're getting, by using the Appendix 5 from the submission draft plan, we are capturing what we think are the true costs as of now of actually providing infrastructure. How that is divided up, each application must be considered on its own merits. That's the advice of your officers and the legal advice we've had, each application has to, in effect, wash its own face. So the infrastructure requirements for the southern site are generated by the 200 dwellings that are proposed, and the requirements are set out in the committee report. The figures are an indication of the final amount, because at this stage, because it's an outline application, we don't have the final details of the exact mix of housing. So there would be a formula in the 106. So when you do know the final mix of the housing, it then captures the appropriate amount. So the figures you've got are based on average occupancy to give you an idea of the amount of money that would be collected. In terms of the schools and the doctor's surgery, I think the point to make here is that applicants are required to mitigate the impacts of their development, not to remedy any existing deficiencies. And it's West Sussex County providing school places in the district. They have no objection to the application, subject to the infrastructure requirements that they've set out. The same with doctors. Obviously, the NHS is responsible for that service. And again, they have no objection to this application, subject to the monies that are set out in the committee report to mitigate the impact of this development. So it's those, they're the responsible bodies for providing those respective services, and they're content with the application. I think that's probably all I wanted to pick up in terms of the 106. I don't know if we want to go through some of the highways matters now.
One point I just wanted to confirm with you, a point that Councillor Williams made, that if Waits did sell on the site, any subsequent developer would be bound by the conditions of the application, wouldn't they?
Yes, I mean, the short answer is yes. Planning permission runs with the land. Developers, applicants can and do sell sites on with planning permissions, but yeah, the same conditions would bind, as would all the requirements of the 106. So yes.
Thank you. That puts your mind at rest. Ian, would you like to respond to the points made? Just on the southern site at this stage, if you would.
Thank you, Chairman. My intention was to provide comments on the southern site anyway, but yeah, thank you. I'm going to be as brief as I can. I know there's a lot of points raised there. Taken firstly, the concerns raised regarding the access, I would confirm that that has been designed to appropriate standards, taking into account recorded traffic speeds as opposed to the posted speed limit. All accesses have been the subject of a Stage 1 road safety audit as well. That is an independent process undertaken by an audit team that's separate to the design organisation and the County Council. Regarding the inaccuracies in terms of the data used, there is always going to be some variability in terms of walking and cycling times across the site, a particular site of this nature. The walking and cycling times will have been measured from central points, so naturally some journeys will be longer and some journeys will be shorter. I think it's important for members to take on board that those distances used should not be taken as ultimate thresholds, however. They are very much advisory. It should be used more in terms of guidance, in terms of the wider accessibility of the site. Councillor Hitchcock raised quite a number of points, quite specific points in particular. I think with southern access, in particular the narrow footway over the bridge, again, I think that's fully acknowledged. It's a simple case of there is limited space to do anything there. It's beyond the developer's control to widen the footway, and an alternate solution such as a separate footbridge would be disproportionate and therefore not meet the planning test. So it's very much a case for this committee to consider the application as it stands with the footway as it is. concerns raised also regarding the operation of the crossing, the new crossing that is, near the southern access point. Yes, it could be modelled. You could model that and assume some kind of the operation, the call times. Realistically, though, and given experience of other similar crossing points, it's not going to generate severe impacts or any kind of other safety capacity type impacts that would be severe enough to warrant an objection on highway grounds. The lights would simply go red, people would cross, and then queues would disperse. It's as simple as that. It's a normal crossing. There's nothing untoward here. The operation times would probably be relatively minimal. And unless there's anything else, Chairman, I'm going to leave it there because I suspect there's going to be a few points raised by the committee.
Okay, thank you very much. Before I throw it open to members, there is just one question in which I know when we had the site visit the other day and members that have visited the site independently, the southernmost entrance, the crossing, as I understand it, is a toucan crossing across the B2028. There's not going to be any controlled lights coming out of the southern exit onto the road.
That's correct. It is a signalised crossing push button, so anyone crossing would push the button, wait for the lights to go red, and then cross. The lights would then go green. The access to the north is a simple priority junction, similar to Vicarage Road on the opposite side.
Okay. Right, thank you very much. Right, I open the debate to members. Can they please indicate? Councillor Henwood.
My first question, fairly straightforward. Initially, this was put forward as one site. So my question is, when we talk about section 106, the impact on the contributions, does it alter depending, now it is two different sites as opposed to initially as one site? What impact does that have on the contributions of section 106? Thank you.
Yeah, it doesn't make a difference to the overall total because the two developments together add up to the same number of houses, so it doesn't make any difference. We're not losing out as a council or a community, so it doesn't make a difference.
Councillor Whitaker.
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask Mr. Gledhill, the Mid-Sussex District Plan Policy DP21, page 69, basically says that any development shall be required to support the objectives of the West Sussex Transport Plan. In particular, a transport network that feels and is safer and healthier to use. Can you, hand on heart, say that that new junction, which is basically going to create a crossroads opposite Vicarage Road, is going to be safer than not forming a crossroads, i.e. not putting the access road in there? And you say that a road safety audit has been completed. There were a number of queries raised by your colleagues during the consultation process. Have they all been satisfactorily sorted out? Thank you.
Please, Ian. No, it should be red. You.
No.
2 minutes switched on. There's only the two on at the moment.
I'm good.
Right, okay, in business.
Thank you, Chairman. As I said in my brief summary earlier, the access is designed to standards. It has been the subject of a road safety audit. The road safety audit hasn't raised any issues in terms of the formation of the crossroads in that location. The number of actual crossing movements from the development to Vicarage Road is very low. The traffic flow data is within the TA. It's single digit numbers during the peak hours. Of course, it's safer not to provide an access. We're providing the access here, but there is no evidence here to suggest that access that we're forming is going to cause an unacceptable safety issue. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Reeves.
Thank you, Chair. I have quite a few questions. Water is the first one. Page 74, the South East Water, they haven't objected, it's true, but they say that off-site reinforcement is required to enable them to serve the development. And I wonder if this committee could see its way to put a condition in saying that, as they recommend, that advanced discussions happen with them to find a resolution to ensure sufficient time incorporated within the applicant's build programme to enable that reinforcement to be commissioned. In other words, there isn't enough water, so there should be some discussion with them and a resolution before this goes ahead. So that's my first question. Secondly, car club, brilliant, wonderful to see a car club. I very much welcome this, but as you read through, you realise that it's one car per site. There are going to be 1,000 people, one car per site. And the thing with car clubs is you put a column in and the column has 2 sockets. So it's very logical to put 2 cars in if you're putting in an EVCP car club. So again, I'd like to see a condition saying that there should be 2 cars per site, because otherwise I see that the developer will say, oh dear, we have to have 2 cars per pillar, therefore why don't we put just 1 pillar in the middle between the 2 and 2 cars there. So that again is something I would like to see. Thirdly, where is the badger set and what is going to happen to it? And fourthly, net zero carbon ready homes, all of which should be hyphenated really. What is that word ready? It's doing a lot of heavy lifting. Does this just mean no gas? Thank you.
Thank you. Steve.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I mean, in terms of the first point, I don't think a condition is required in relation to the water supply. There is no objection from South East Water. They're the organisation that will be providing the supply. And clearly, as with any site, it's for the developer to sort that out essentially with that provider. A developer simply isn't going to build houses if they don't have a water supply for obvious reasons. So I just don't think it's necessary. In terms of the car club, that's what's being proposed by the applicant in terms of 1 per site. The officer's view is that is satisfactory. It meets with policy in terms of trying to support sustainable means of transport, give alternatives to the private car and so on. So that's what's before members. It's your officer's view that that's acceptable. There's no objection, say, from the local highway authority to that. So obviously that's something that members will have to take a view on. But as I say, we don't think there's any grounds to say that what's being proposed is unacceptable. In terms of the badger set, that's on the southern part of the site. I'm obviously not going to say exactly where it is because that's in the confidential report. But it's not adversely affected by the development. Our ecological consultant's obviously seen that confidential report and is happy that there's no issue there. So I think those are the.
Okay.
Net zero carbon ready.
Oh, sorry.
The word ready.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the final details of exactly what will come forward, that would be at the reserve matter stage. The applicants have indicated in the application, and it's summarised in the committee report, what they're proposing. As I say, the final details would come through at reserve matter stage.
Councillor Jackson.
Right. Thank you, Chairman. I think in an ideal world, we'll probably want to object to this application, but in the real world, this particular site, although not in the existing district plan, it does appear in the district plan review, which is under examination at the moment. And therefore, we've actually accepted that it's probably a suitable place for development. Of course, if we turn it down because we don't meet the 5-year land supply, then of course, under that NPPF, there's a presumption to development, and therefore, if we were to turn it down, the likelihood we would lose on appeal. So it looks as though we probably will have to accept this development. In terms of the parish council, Worth Parish Council, they seem to accept the fact that development will take place, and they are quite in agreement to the sort of Section 106 provisions of will help to enhance the Worth community. In terms of the highways thing, of course, we always have issues with extra traffic on the roads, but the big thing we have to consider is, does it significantly alter the problems already existing on the road network? And it's suggested that this is probably not a significant addition to what are, at peak times, problems on the road network. So I think in some ways, I think I'm probably convinced in perhaps going and approving this particular plan.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Henwood.
Thank you. I know this is for reserved matters, but insofar as we actually have a Waits representative here, I would just like to point out in their comment for sustainability that in order to have an air source heat pump and electric vehicle charging points, you have to have electricity. And having heard already that there tends to be power cuts, could we please appeal for photovoltaics or some type of renewable energy when we have the reserved matters application? Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Prescott.
Thank you, Chairman. I just really wanted to add to what Councillor Jackson has said, and I think it's also worth noting that it's easy to criticise the developers, but in this case, they're using 30% of the available site, and I think they really ought to be commended for that. There's a huge open green space. There's an equivalent of a sang, even though it's not needed, and I think it's potentially a very good development. And again, as the councillor from Worth has said, it may not be ideal, but if we're going to have something, let's have this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bates.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think basically this is a development in progress. Hopefully the points that have been raised both for and against are taken on board for the proposals coming in detail forward. I just wanted to ask two quick questions. The self-build element, are they identified in the two sites, the 2.5%? And presumably those sites would then be subject to separate planning applications. And the other thing is on the plan is number 17. You've got 2 access points into the site, and you've only got an emergency road between the two. How will that operate in the circumstances of an emergency? So those are the two small questions. Yeah, I've actually encountered Waits about 3 generations ago, and I was always impressed by their way in which they went through on development. So I think this particular application is a very good balanced site with building and the surrounding land that they're managing. So I would be of a mind to proceed with this application.
Thank you. Steve.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. In terms of the self-build element, that isn't identified, the location of that at the moment, because all of this layout is illustrative, so that would come at the reserved matter stage. There are 2 separate conditions at the end of the report relating to that self-build element, so we have particular details relating to that element when it comes forward. And the other point, just that access that we saw on the site visit from field parcel 5 down through to here would just be a pedestrian and cycle access, and it would just follow that existing path that we walk down on the visit. So that's
So
what that
there's
would
no
be.
emergency?
No, it would just be pedestrian and cycle link.
Because my understanding was there's ancient woodland either side, was there not?
Yeah, that's right. The area to the east here is ancient woodland. Yeah, that's right.
Thank you. Are there any other councillors wish to speak? I know there are some concerns regarding the access, from that, especially from those of us that live in the north of the area and use that area fairly frequently. But we are confronted with our usual dilemma of county highways have said that the impact is not going to be severe. So, I would point out that if members are minded to vote against this on highways issues, we do need to have some evidence that could be submitted to an inspector. Otherwise, obviously, an inspector would take one look at it and throw it out, and the council would end up with costs. So, do I have a proposer for this, please? Councillor Prescott, a seconder.
I'll second it.
Councillor Sweatman. Right, could we move to the vote, please? Right, the vote is closed. 11 votes in favour, none against and no abstentions. Do councillors want to have a 5-minute break before the next application? Is anybody, or would they prefer to go straight on? M250016, of Turners Hill Road, north of Huntsland. This is the other half of the site, which is in the plan, as explained earlier. So I'll ask Steve King to make his presentation on the northern section, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. So before I start, again, I'll just draw members' attention to the update sheet. So some slight tweaks to elements of the report, some to correct typographical errors. The substantive elements are additional conditions regarding, again, the parameter plans, a condition regarding allotments and works relating to footway extension and improvement works at Wychwood. And finally, an informative regarding the details of the construction management plan and essentially asking the applicants to investigate the possibility of taking construction access via Hurst Farm to the north. So to go through the application, another outline application seeks planning permission for the erection of up to 150 dwellings, a care home of up to 70 beds, and associated infrastructure, including a new access point off Wychwood. So the application site here, it's outlined in red, so it's to the north of the site we just considered. Again, it's the same planning policy background, so the site is in the countryside as defined in the district plan. Northern boundary is marked by trees and hedging. Then you've got some rural farm buildings here that are not in use at the moment. This site is proposed to be allocated as well in the submission draft district plan under policy DPA 10 for housing. Western boundary marked by trees and hedging. There's also a public right of way along there that will see on the subsequent slides. Gradual fall in levels at the southern part of the site down to the public right-of-way that runs through. Trees and hedging along the boundary here and all the way up here. And then you've got the relatively new development across there to the east. And again, this is the same slide as before. So that's the public right-of-way that runs to the north of the other proposed allocation to the north. Public right-of-way running along the western boundary, same areas of ancient woodland adjoining the site here, and along the western boundary. And again, that's just the same plan in terms of the proposed allocation in the submission draft plan. So this is the illustrative site plan for the northern part of the site. The details of the application are set out in section 10 of the committee report. So as before, it's an outline application with the means of access to be determined. So this is an illustrative layout to show how the site could be developed. So you've got the new vehicular access point here into the site that would be fixed at the outline stage. So that's on the nearest 27 Woods View, which is the property on the corner. And then this is the existing road that would be used. It runs through here and then turns at 90 degrees and then adjoins Turner's Hill Road at this point. So in terms of the detail of the access point, the road would be realigned, existing road realigned, so it would come straight through into the site. This is 27 Woods View. At the moment, the road does this and loops round, so it would be this realignment and then the access road into the site like that. The applicants have shown some proposed alternative locations for the care home. So the first plan that I showed the care home could be located there. They've also shown that could be located elsewhere in the site. As I say, these are all illustrative plans in terms of the layout of the residential element of the site. Similar parameter plan to previous applications. So the yellow shows the proposed developed areas in terms of built form, and then it would be the southern parcel that would be the open space, possible allotments, and then open space around the boundaries of the site and along the existing field boundary here to retain as much of the trees and hedging along that boundary as possible. Again, similar plan to the previous application in terms of green infrastructure. So again, it's the white is the proposed physical development, new access point here, and then the remainder of the site is open space, the main area at the southern end of the site here, with links down to that public right-of-way that runs through the site, and then into the southern site that we've just considered. And same building heights parameter plan. So again, it's up to 2.5 stories in terms of building heights. In terms of off-site works, this plan just shows the bus stops that would be improved and provided with real-time passenger information and shelters. And the next plan shows works on the proposed on Wychwood Place. So at the moment, as we saw from the site visit, the pavement on the southern and then eastern side of Wychwood Place. It's hard surfaced until around this point, and then it becomes a mix of grassed and then hard surfacing across individual driveways. So the proposal is to replace the grassed elements of that with hard surfacing to make it easier for pedestrians to use and navigate. And this slide on the shows the existing footway, as we saw at the site visit, terminates at this point. So what's proposed is an extension of the footway here and then a crossing. This element here is existing. That's a shared surface that provides access to these properties here and these two properties. But there's no vehicular access from here onto the Turners Hill Road. There's a bollard here. So this is a shared surface, and then you walk through this area, and then you're onto the footway along Turners Hill Road, and that's where the existing signalised crossing is. So if you were within the site going north, you've got the option of cutting the corner in effect, going here and using the crossing rather than going up here. If you were going further north, you might just walk round this way once it's made more attractive. Those are the proposals there. And in terms of the drainage, again, the final details would be dealt with by condition and then the reserve matter stage, but it's a similar proposal before on-site attenuation, various suds and swale features to then drain off the site to existing watercourses at the greenfield rate. So that's exactly the same principle as the previous application. So just some photos of the site. So these are views into and along Wychwood. So that's stood on the Turners Hill Road looking directly into the site. So you can see it's a hard surface pavement to begin with. Then once you get into Wychwood, this is looking northwards, so you can see the mixture of grassed footway and then the hard standing crossover. This is looking the other way, so this is looking southwards. So at the moment you've got the footway terminating here, so the idea is to extend that along here to then allow you to cross over to the shared surfaced area. This is just looking along Turners Hill Road, so that's the access into Wychwood there. Various views along Wychwood Place on up here, so this is looking along Wychwood. The application site is further to the back here. This is the house on the corner, so the new access point would be coming over here, so the road realigned to run across here. This is in effect the eastern boundary of the site, so that's the trees and hedging along the eastern boundary, and the application site is the other side of that fencing, and that's the shared surface that I mentioned with the bollard. So you walk through there and you can just see the signalised crossing there beyond. And just some views within the site. So these are at the top end of the site. So these are looking back towards the east, towards Woods View. So you can just see that there. This is the very northernmost field. So this is looking north towards Hurst Farm. You can just see the existing buildings in the background. This is at the southern end of the site looking to the west, so that's the nearest property on the far southwestern corner of the site. So a gradual rise in levels. This is taken from just inside the public right-of-way at the bottom end of the site, the southern end, so looking upwards. So if I go back to the illustrative layout. I won't go through all of the assessment again because we've done that on the previous application, but it's the same legal framework, the same issues in relation to the site being in the countryside, etc. So I won't rehearse all of that again because we've just done that. I'll focus on the specifics in terms of the application itself. So outline application with the means of access to be determined. So transport is a key issue on this application. You'll see that that's dealt with on, to begin with, para 12.26 of the report. So you'll see from that report that, again, the local highway authority has no objection to the planning application in terms of this access point or the impact of the development on the wider highway network. I've run through some of the proposed improvements in relation to pedestrian access to the site in terms of improving that grass footway that runs alongside, which would at that point. So clearly the use of this access road to serve the development is an important matter in the determination of the application. You'll see the details of Whichwood in terms of its geometry and length. They're all set out in the committee report, and for the reasons that are set out in that report, there is no objection to the use of this access to serve the development. I think the Highways Authority's detailed comments are quoted in para 12.39 of the report. New planning officers have no reason to disagree with that assessment. As with the previous application, the transport assessment of the applicants has looked at various junctions off-site with this development and other committed development, and as with the previous application, there's not a severe impact on the network, and no objection from the local highway authority or again National Highways who've looked at that junction 10 on the M23. The sustainable transport measures are again set out in para 12.5.1 of the report, so I won't go through those. In terms of the landscape impacts, very similar issues to the previous report. The site is well enclosed by boundary screening, but for all the reasons that we had on the previous application, whilst there will clearly be a change to the character of the area, officers consider that's mitigated to an acceptable degree and is acceptable given the reduced weight to policy DP12 at the moment. Heritage assets, again, that's in the report, the same issues as we've discussed on the previous application. Again, this application proposes the policy compliant level of affordable housing at 30% and the same percentage, 2% of self-build. Again, same as we've considered before. In terms of residential amenity, we don't think that there will be any significant harm caused by the development to the existing occupiers adjacent to the site. So the properties on Woods View along here are the closest ones. As we saw from the photograph, there's good screening along here. So we don't think there would be a severe or significant impact on those residents. Trees and ecology, that's again dealt with in detail in the report, but again, no objection from the council's tree officer or our ecological consultant. And again, the application provides the in excess of the mandatory 10% BNG, which again is positive in the planning balance. The infrastructure, exactly the same as before, so I won't go through that again. And it's the same issue in relation to the Ashdown Forest as well. So in your officer's view, it's the same planning balance applies, and we think that the adverse impacts, again, don't significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits, and that the benefits are the provision of the housing, including affordable housing and self-build, which is a national priority at the moment, as we know, and all the economic benefits, again, same as the previous application. So again, subject to the conditions in the report, the update sheet, and the completion of the legal agreement, the application is recommended for approval, Chairman.
Thank you, Steve. Right, we now move on to the speakers. Now, on the list I've been provided with, it indicates that all of the speakers wish to make statements on the second application, and even if you wanted to make exactly the same points as you did with the first one, you are legally entitled to. But if you were or wish to make the same comments and are happy just to say that I make the same comments as on the first application, we would be more than happy for you to do that, because obviously that would save us time and save some repetition. So if I can go through the list, Councillor Williams, do you wish to? Yes, you can sit at the back.
All right, we're still Finbees and we want to make the same comments.
Okay, thank you very much. Dr. Thring? No, unless you wish to make a new statement, please just indicate from there that...
I do need to say more about this, because although it's not affecting me from the flooding point of view, I do object from the point
All right, well, if you wish to make some comments that you didn't make in the first presentation, then please feel free to go and make them now.
Thank you.
And again, you are restricted to 3 minutes, and I will try and indicate when you've got a minute left.
Right, well, I think it's another objection to the use of good farmland for development, which we don't really need in this area. That's the first thing. The second thing is that there has been a certain amount of what I might call persuasion of some local people who've not really objected to the whole scheme, and they've been persuaded to allow it by being offered, for example, right of way from their land. The land to the west has a right of way which goes north and then east. And to my mind, that is completely superfluous. It might be good for walking the dog, but if you want to go east, you can perfectly well use the existing Hunson's Lane from where they are. So I would say that's an example of the developers persuading people, pushing people into not objecting to the whole project, or in this case, this project. And thirdly, I mean, it seems to me like a very dense development. It looks actually bigger than the 200 on the south side. I don't know how that pans out, but in either case, there's far too much development on agricultural land, and we object to that alone, because we might need farmland if we get embargoed by foreign countries that don't like us attacking them. Russia's one, China might even be another. We'll need to use the farmland that we've got for self-sufficiency and keeping us fed and keeping prices down. And also it affects farmers' jobs. We've seen, somebody has recognised that point. I would say if we're going to be self-sufficient, we might better use that land for self-sufficiency of our own supplies. So for those three reasons, I would say this is another objection to this development in this area, in addition to the ones that I made about the southern site. So thank you very much for that.
Ben, there was no indication of time. Or was it me? Couldn't see it. Right. You wish to make? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, moving on to those speaking in favour. Dave Connor, do you wish to make some further points or? Right, again, 3 minutes starts when you start speaking.
Right, I've just jumped a bit of my speech because I don't want to repeat myself too much. I just want to remind of a few key points. The football club from one grassroots team, Crawley Down FC, have grown to 32 teams. Today, we have over 550 players from 5-year-olds taking the first kick of a ball to teenagers creating lifelong memories, not to mention getting a phone off their face and an iPad away from their face. So sport is very important to them. There are thousands more people connected to the club, but we're at a turning point. Demand is outpacing what we can offer, and to bring football to a greater number of children and adults, the club need access to a floodlit all-weather 3G locally. I'm therefore here today to support the application once again, and the application you have just heard, as it gives the club an opportunity to benefit from Section 106 funding towards the delivery of 3G floodlit all-weather football pitch at the home ground, the Haven Sports Field. The 3G pitch would allow us to train all year around. More matches and training, enabling us to take on more players together with shared access and local schools and community schools groups. It will serve not just our club, but the entire Worth community, supporting local people's physical and mental health and a vibrant future locally for sport. We are very grateful to Worth Parish Council and Mid Sussex District Council for recognising the need for the 3G pitch and backing its inclusion in the infrastructure delivery plan. I urge you to consider the benefits of the 3G football pitch in your discussion, as this is more than a 3G football pitch. It is a lasting legacy for sport in our community.
Thank you very much. James Bevis, I'm fairly certain you've got a fresh presentation to make.
Good afternoon again. I'll not repeat my first speech, and I'll try to be brief. In terms of access to the northern site, we are aware of the concerns that have been raised regarding the proposed access via Wychwood Place. Firstly, the application is consistent with the wording of your draft policy that requires access via Wychwood Place for this development. Secondly, I was responsible for the design of that access. It is designed in accordance with the guidance set out in the Department for Transport's Manual for Streets, which requires local streets that are slow speed and safe, especially for pedestrians and cyclists. The Manual for Streets moved design away from the historic approach of car dominance with wide and straight estate roads. Empirical evidence is clear that wide and straight roads result in fast-moving traffic, which is neither safe nor desirable. The design for Wychwood Place included a new footway alongside the access road. For reasons outside of the applicant's control, that footway has not yet been delivered. It will be. There is a guarantee that it will now be delivered. The applicant is happy with the condition proposed by your officers that prevents the development from proceeding until it is. Construction impacts have also been raised as a concern. Waits is listening to these concerns and will take steps to secure construction access via Hurst Farm. An informative has been added to the relevant condition along these lines. Again, you don't need to take my word for the transport acceptability of this scheme. Our work has been scrutinised thoroughly by the County Council and National Highways. They have worked as hard and are happy that the scheme is acceptable, and this view is shared by your officers as set out in the committee report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right. Mayor Baker, I believe you've got some fresh comments to make.
Thank you again, Chair and members, for allowing me to speak and support your officer's recommendation again. As with the Southern application, the Waits team is very proud to support the local plan process and contribute towards the delivery of housing within your district. Many of the points I've made previously around the strength of our collaborative approach equally apply to this application. This collaborative work has taken place over many years, with many meetings with the parish, local residents and adjacent Wychwood neighbours to discuss key matters such as drainage, landscaping and highways. The scheme again has been thoroughly tested and has no statutory objections. Just a couple of points on the benefits. 150 new net zero carbon ready homes, including 45 of those to be affordable. A 70-bed care home, providing vital support to our ageing population. Over 15 acres of safeguarded green infrastructure to include new walking routes and biodiversity zones. A new St Leonard's Lookout, which would provide a vibrant community space featuring a bandstand, picnic area, children's play area and community orchard. Significant 106 contributions, again further funding works required at the football club, Haven Centre, cricket club and obviously NHS services amongst a few. As James highlighted, there's many also highway improvements to come forward. I would like to assure members that we have listened and acknowledge comments around the construction phase of this scheme should it come forward. I highlight the informative that's been put forward, and this is the last on the last page of the last paragraph of the agenda update sheet. And I can, as a director of Waits, fully assure you that Waits will take steps to obtain construction access through Hurst Farm as a priority if this is consented. Finally, I'd like to draw your attentions to paragraph 11.24 to 11.30 of your officer's report in respect to the site's sustainability and suitability. Again, my team is very proud of the collaborative work that's undergone with these proposals, and I really hope you will look and support your officers.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hitchcock, you made comments on the Northern in your presentation. You haven't, right? Okay, if you could thank Councillor Gibson. And in case members are wondering, Councillor Gibson will now be speaking as a ward councillor, will be unrestricted, and he was advised by, for legal reasons, by the monitoring officer that he should absent himself until the point he spoke, which is why he's not been in the room now. Normally.
Slightly better delay than the BBC had when they were in Glastonbury.
Right. Obviously, Councillor Gibson, you are unrestricted as ward councillor on this occasion, although, of course, I would ask you to be reasonable from the ears of the committee. And can I ask you to restrict your comments to the application in front of us, rather than any issues you may have with the monitoring officer, please?
I need to start by declaring that I have a disclosable pecuniary interest in this application, for which I've obtained a dispensation, and that disclosable pecuniary interest is the ownership of land and buildings in the proximity of the application. It's extraordinary that I have been given a dispensation to speak on this, application, but it was, as I said earlier, it was removed. The dispensation was restricted to this yesterday, whereas previously it had obviously applied to both. And the comments that I'm about to make, I would have liked to have made earlier. I apologise that the 3 minutes that I had was very garbled earlier, and I don't think that I did the residents that I represent justice in terms of what I was able to say in that time. Anyway, right, this is an outline application with all matters reserved except access, but it's important to remember that it includes the principle of the development. That's the change of land use from agriculture to housing. So that is what you are approving, as well as the access. As the committee report sets out, this is not an allocated site, and there are conflicts with a number of the policies in the district plan and the Crawley Down neighbourhood plan. If this application had come forward last year, when the council had a 5-year housing land supply, it would have been recommended for refusal. However, the council's lack of a 5-year housing land supply means that the presumption in favour of sustainable development in paragraph 11, it's 11D, of the MPPF is in play. But the framework is clear that should you consider that the adverse impacts of the development would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits, then you should refuse the application. And I'm arguing that the adverse impacts of the proposed development do significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits, and that the application should be refused. So let me set the context. I'll repeat, because I think this is worth repeating these points. The gap between East Grinstead and Crawley was designated as a countryside area of development restraint until the introduction of the MPPF in 2012. You heard that from Dr. Trin. In the decade since then, over 1,500 new houses have been built in that gap, and there are existing permissions for another 1,000. And the infrastructure to support that growth hasn't been provided. There's no new roads in the area, no new schools. In fact, the plan to build a school in Copthorne has fallen away. There are capacity issues in the utilities. The primary healthcare provider is in special measures. Rain brings surface water flooding of both new and established properties, and that is true on so many of the developments. I regularly get calls on that. Already children moving into new homes in Crawley Down cannot get places in the village primary school, and that is going to extend to Imberhorn School in the near future. Local roads are rat runs, including Vicarage Road and the Vicarage Road junction, with regular accidents at the Worthway end of Wallage Lane, and the reference in the committee report to congestion on the Turners Hill Crossroads is the understatement of the year. Just a few warm days, South East Water are bringing in a hosepipe ban tomorrow. So this is the reality in which the applicant has put forward these applications for 350 homes, 700 cars and 1,000 new residents. And it's not surprising that residents have written to express their concerns that the village cannot cope and that their own access to services will be prejudiced. Clearly, the applicant is not required to address existing deficiencies, but the committee needs to be certain that the infrastructure provision is sufficient and achievable. The local school might be within walking distance of this site, but that is irrelevant if there's no places there. And similar concerns in our neighbouring Uckfield have prompted the district council there to impose Grampian conditions on developers to ensure that Southern Water has sufficient capacity to treat wastewater. We need to start doing the same. There's been numerous previous applications for housing on the farm, including one for 165 homes in 1975. They've all been refused by your predecessors on the grounds that they were contrary to the local plan in its various forms. In the 1970s, the forerunner of this council actually paid the landowner not to build houses. About a third of the farm's 80 acres is classed as the best agricultural land, and the latest tenant, a young farmer, a local young farmer who's currently farming the land for arable and livestock. Approving this application will result in the loss of that long-term employment and should be taken into account in the planning balance. In my view, at least, it outweighs the short-term employment that the construction of houses will generate. And that loss of local jobs is contrary to policy 7 of the Crawley Down neighbourhood plan. I could pull it out the bag, but it would take too long. And there's other examples where the benefits been overestimated or the adverse impacts underestimated in the planning balance. And I urge you to consider these in your discussion and reach your own conclusion regarding whether you can be sure that the adverse impacts are significantly overcome by the benefits, as the recommendation suggests. In addition to local employment, I would urge you to consider coalescence, heritage, housing, the emerging district plan, the local consultation, the derelict buildings at the centre of the site, and the value of the proposed S106 contributions. Now, coalescence is normally thought of in linear terms on the road networks that connect communities, but it implies equally to the gaps between communities, the green gap between East Grinstead and Crawley again, right? Further large development in that gap is contrary to policies DP6 and DP13 of the district plan and policy 8 of the Crawley Down neighbourhood plan. On heritage, now I hope you all walked along Huntsland Drive, which is a well-used public footpath, very much so since the pandemic. That's where I live, and that's where I've seen a lot more people there. It's part of a circular walk round Huntsland and Hurst Farms. You will have seen the group of non-designated heritage buildings, including Huntsland, its former outbuildings, and Huntsland Barn, on the southern side of the public footpath. I agree with the officer's assessment that the harm to these buildings is less than substantial. That's actually all that it can be. But I disagree that this is outweighed by the benefits of the development. It fails to take into account the setting of the buildings as part of a public footpath which is regularly walked by members of the community. And that less than substantial harm should be given significant weight because of the setting of the buildings on that public footpath. The development would provide, I've got 150 here affordable homes. I'm sure that's wrong, it's slightly less. In a mix of first homes, homes for shared ownership, there's no homes for shared ownership, and homes for affordable rent. The Crawley Down neighbourhood plan has established that the local need for homes is for first-time buyers and for downsizing. The homes for affordable rent will not address these aspects of the local need. Prior to the introduction of the MPPF, Crawley Down had 129 homes for affordable rent, and that was about 7.5% of the total housing stock, and 66 households registered on the housing register with the village as their preference, and that was out of a total of 2,488 households on the common housing register. And incidentally, the register today has about 2,500 on it again. Since 2012, over 130 new affordable homes have been built in the village, including 50 in 2 rural exception sites. The local demand for affordable homes has been significantly reduced as a result of the increase in that stock. And when affordable homes become available in the village, they are routinely offered to households whose preference is to live elsewhere. And I meet young families who say, oh yes, I took this house, even though my network is down in Burgess Hill. So they're driving out to where they would really like properties owned. As a council, we have to learn that we need to build those affordable houses where people want to live. I want to just point out that the range of alternative locations for the care home in the proposed northern land parcel highlights how outline these layouts are, and that the final layout is unlikely to bear any resemblance to the drawings that you see today. I say that particularly because the Witchwood Phase 2 development, the design was changed so radically from the permission when it was finally given by the Secretary of State to what is there today. The Emerging District Plan. Now, the report sets out that the farm is an allocated site in the Emerging District Plan, which is currently at examination and can only be given moderate weight, and that means moderate weight in favour of permission. I've got 2 concerns with the inclusion of the Emerging District Plan in the planning balance. And the first is, it arises from the inspector's email of 4th of April, in which she wrote, I have now concluded that the council has not met the duty to cooperate in its preparation of the plan. A failure to meet the duty to cooperate is fatal to the progression of a plan and cannot be rectified following submission. And my second concern is that the proposed allocation was for an entire farm as one site, including the derelict buildings. Now, that's not the same as the application before you today. The committee report also refers to the Sheila assessments for the whole farm, but it's likely that those would have been different if they'd been assessed separately. So taken together, these two concerns raise a doubt over the validity of including the allocation in the emerging district plan as a positive influence in the planning balance. The material used in the local consultation, again, it's in the bag, I won't pull it out. And that was undertaken in November. It's also based on the whole farm as a single unit. And the subsequent splitting into two sites with duplicated applications has been a source of confusion for many members of the local community in terms of the total numbers, and it's surprising that officers did not feel that a second consultation was necessary, especially as the community buildings and the Muga, multi-use games area, highlighted as key benefits in the consultation in the land parcel that you are about to discuss. They disappeared from the applications. Committee members will recall that the promotion of the SA19 site for 200 homes on Crawley Down Road in Foulbridge was not allowed to be divided into two sites on grounds that this would prejudice the highways assessment. There's inconsistency in allowing Huntsland to come forward as two sites, and a concern that this means that the impact on a range of local roads and junctions could have been underestimated. And I assume that the committee viewed the derelict farms during the site. The buildings have had a checkered history in recent years. They've been subject to vandalism and rough sleeping. There's been fires in the barn along the footpath, and its roof has been damaged. The adverse environmental and social impacts of the building are contrary to policy 26 of the Mid-Sussex District Plan and should be given considerable weight against approval in the planning balance. If those buildings are left in place, there will be vandalism and rough sleeping and God knows what else, drug taking and so on. The value of the Process 16 contributions, and let me say that, yes, I support the Worth Parish Council view that we should make sure that we get the best value out of this. Are we getting that? That's my key questions. Right, the value has been reduced by the split into two applications. The loss of the community building, it highlights it, right? A development of 350 homes, a single development, could support a community building. A development of 150 can't, so money is offered instead. And it appears likely that the permissions granted will be sold on. And that's happened elsewhere. And I should say that when Waits actually do the first Witchwood phase, the houses in that are excellent, right? And that was because they ran the development themselves with Kayla. The second one, much less so in terms of, in terms of the general layout and the rest of the site. The problem is that two developments will proceed at different paces, possibly years apart, and that will affect the timing of the S106 payments, significantly reducing the ability to use them for the large community projects such as a 3G pitch or enhancements to a cricket pavilion to support a ladies' team. Now, East Grinstead councillors and Monster will remember that you recently approved the development of 550 homes on Imdawn Farm, and I recall that Councillor Whitaker specifically noted the sports complex that the development was funding. A floodlit 3G pitch, a 400-metre running track, winter rugby and football pitches, a cricket square and a pavilion. If East Grinstead gets that for 550 houses, what should Crawley Down get for 350? The need is for a 3G pitch, cricket changing facilities for ladies, and a clubhouse for tennis. Right. 2 years ago, I endeavoured to get at least the 3G pitch at the Haven Centre included in the allocation policy, and you've had the IDP mentioned before. I wanted it included as an off-site provision because that would guarantee that it was built, which is what, and you've heard the football club, it's what they want.
Councillor Gibson, can I point out that we are considering the northern application and not the merits of the two applications.
Mr. Chairman, the money will go from this application to that. Anyway, I was assured that footnote 52 would provide for that, but it hasn't. Right, and I would urge the committee now to consider how it can condition that these permissions ensure that these new sports facilities are brought forward at the start of construction and not in many years' time. I believe that a development of this overall scale should provide on-site community facilities. Sorry, Chairman, I'm straying there. But I believe that the community which will come together on the west side of the Turners Hill Road has the right to expect some facilities of its own. And it was there in the consultation. It was a community centre and it was a Muga. So, in my view, division into two has reduced the value of it. Access. The access with the proposed northern land parcel, I obviously had comments on the southern land parcel, but time has gone, is an example of the failure to adopt a strategic approach to development. The reliance on development-led selection has led to a piecemeal approach that results in a proposal that would place an unacceptably high capacity on the existing single exit out of Wychwood. And that single exit is between the signalised pedestrian crossing and the bus stop. The number of properties served by that exit has grown from the original 26 of the Wychwood Phase 1 development to 70 with the addition of Wychwood Phase 2, and is now proposed to rise to 220 plus the care home traffic. When it was originally proposed to support the Wychwood Phase 1 development, the position of the access onto the Turners Hill Road was the subject of considerable debate, given the existing safety issues of the Sandy Lane exit onto Turners Hill Road and the need for a separate emergency access, which there was a photo, I believe, with the post in the middle of it, and the need for a pedestrian crossing point and the location of the bus stop. Even the Secretary of State recognised the unsatisfactory nature of the solution when he made the crossing being updated to a signalised crossing a condition of his approval of Wychwood Phase 2. And interesting, that's a Grampian condition. The route to the school, health centre, shops, the restaurants on Sandy Lane and the signalised crossing serves requires pedestrians to negotiate the dangerous crossing at the top of Sandy Lane to use the pavement on the southern side. Unsurprisingly, this means that the present Wychwood residents prepare to drive out the development, and the new residents of the 150 homes even further away from the village will have even more reason to do so. And access for 220 properties and a care home on the western side of the Turners Hill Road would be best served by the creation of a roundabout, but time has gone for that. So all you can say is that a strategic approach should have been taken in which Hurst Farm and the northern land parcel were added together, and the Hurst Farm exit was the exit for the entire development. And that is outside the red line. A final point on the proposed access into the northern land parcel relates to the proposed link road that will join the existing Wychwood Phase 2 internal road. From the drawings I've seen, the proposed link road is going to be built on approximately 2,000 cubic metres unused topsoil that the Wychwood Phase 2 developer dumped and levelled off in that area. That raised the land height considerably there. It's effectively created a sud around the ancient wood there. My concern would be that the unstable nature of that bank. And that leads me to just some final comments on drainage for this. Huntston Farm is the headwaters of the Mole, which flows west towards Gatwick, and the Medway, which flows east. The farmland is impermeable clay and slow draining. Large areas are naturally boggy during winter and spring, even before the impact of significant new areas of hard standing are considered. Now, the applicant didn't provide a full contours map for the proposed northern land parcel, and as a result, it's failed to understand that land parcel has a crown, not a ridge line at the highest point. So water radiates out in a number of directions. And that means that the solution which has got there, which is to dig a ditch north-south, is unlikely to capture all of the water that radiates off that. So I have significant issues with the way that drainage plan has been put together. And I would highlight at that point that there was significant problem with pollution of the fishery at the fisheries in Copthorne, including, it is thought, the destruction of otter habitat when the Wychwood Phase 2 development was put forward, just indicating that the way in which the streams flow round and then flow out of the area. I'll come to a conclusion at that point, Chairman. I hope that I've managed to lay out the key issues which I see across the whole piece. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Right, Steve, would you like to make comments on any of the points raised?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll just pick up some of the, I think, of the main points. In terms of the layout that's in front of the council before committee, that is an illustrative layout. It's there to the applicants to demonstrate to the council that that amount of development can be brought forward on the site. Obviously, there are alternative ways of delivering that, as we've seen from the plan showing possible alternative locations for the care home. Obviously, if the outline application is approved, there will be a need for a subsequent reserve matters application to come to the council that will have the detail of the layout and the appearance of the buildings, etc. And that will need to be well designed and well laid out and have regard to our design guidance and so on. So it's not a case of if the outline application's approved, that's the end of it, and you're stuck with something inappropriate on the site. The final details will be subject to a separate application to the council. In relation to the point that was made regarding the emerging or submission district plan, as I said on the previous application, and it's the same for this one, the application has been assessed against the policies in the adopted district plan. We're not assessing the application against the submission draft district plan, and for the reasons set out in the committee report, and I think it's in the conclusion at paragraph 1322, because of the stage that the submission plan is at and everything that's happened, which members are obviously well aware of, the weight to be attached to that document is minimal. So that's the reason why we haven't assessed the application against policy DPA 9. It's been assessed against the policies in the adopted district plan and in relation to the tilted balance of the MPPF. So that's how we've done that. In relation to 106 matters, a mitigation, again, I think it's the same point as the previous report, that we're not losing out by the applicant submitting two separate applications. Each one is required to mitigate its own impact, and as was set out in the report, I think the view was that it would be better to secure money for works off-site at the Haven Centre rather than trying to deliver a modest building here. The centre, the focus for community facilities in Crawley Down is the Haven Centre, and we think that's where investment is better directed. Drainage matters, again, very similar to the previous application, that the developer's drainage strategy has been found to be acceptable in principle by the lead local flood authority. And the final details of that and how that works with the layout of the site would need to come forward again through condition and the reserve matters. But as a matter of principle, we're satisfied that the site can be satisfactorily drained. I think a point was made much earlier on about the density of the scheme. There is a parameter plan. I don't have that as one of the slides, but it shows that the central areas of the site are 40 dwellings per hectare, and it's the outer edges, if you like, are shown as 34 dwellings per hectare, which isn't particularly dense by modern standards in any event. It's all about the detail of the design and how that comes forward at the reserve matter stage. There are a number of matters relating to highways, so I think they're probably best dealt with by Ian rather than myself.
Yes, certainly. Ian, would you like to take over, please?
Thank you, Chairman. There are quite a number of points raised by Councillor Gibson. I think a lot of the issues he was raising related to the operation of the existing network as opposed to the impact of this development, so I'll park that there. One matter I know that's going to come up is the Wychwood Place access width. Again, I would direct members to the comments I've made on the planning application. I've been quite honest in my appraisal of the width of the road there. Yes, in an ideal world, it would be wider. However, it does meet current standards. It is a very low-speed environment. Does it tip the balance of the MPPF in being unsafe and unsuitable? In my professional opinion, it doesn't. But again, I leave it to the committee to consider in the round. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, could I ask one question myself? Were any improvements to the junction with Sandy Lane and the B2028 considered?
No, Chairman, no, none were identified as being necessary. There is, from off the top of my head, there is an accident record there that relates to the physical layout of the junction. I know Councillor Gibson raised issues with the positioning of the pedestrian crossing point. Again, if committee members are so minded, we could, through the detailed design, look at insetting that crossing point further into the junction and moving it away from turning vehicles, but there are no other improvements identified there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right. I know that members will, especially Councillor Prescott, will be pleased at the informative regarding the possible access through Hurst Farm, because I know when members visited the site, they did have some concerns about construction vehicles access through Wychwood. So I opened it up to members. Councillor Jackson.
Right, thank you, Chairman. Though unfortunately I was unable to visit the site, certainly from the photographs, I get a sort of picture of what's happening. Probably like to commend Waits in the fact that they've got a design with plenty of green space around and not a particularly high density of properties on this site. And also they've actually consulted the local community in their needs in terms of section 106. As you've said, looking at that route through Wychwood Place, it's not ideal, and in fact it wouldn't be suitable for heavy construction traffic to pass through there, and therefore what sort of conditions can we have on the application that they do have a construction traffic route through the Hurst Farm link?
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the conditions with the planning application, there is a condition requiring a construction management plan, and the applicants would have to put forward the details of what they were intending to do in terms of accessing the site. If, for argument's sake, then access couldn't be achieved through Hurst Farm to the north, we would have to look at the details that have been submitted to access the site through the existing road network. That might well require banksman at the dogleg corner, for example, vehicles being guided into and out of the site. There's all sorts of ways of addressing that in the event that access couldn't be achieved from the north. So those details would have to come to the council to be approved. And if they weren't satisfactory, then the condition wouldn't be discharged and works couldn't commence on the site. So we would want to see satisfactory details in that CM construction management plan before we discharge the condition.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Prescott.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to say it's great to see the affordable housing provision, and notwithstanding Councillor Gibson's view that people are coming from out of the area, we still need affordable housing across the broader patch. Again, great to see low density. Certainly many more houses could have been squeezed into here, but again, I think Waits are taking a mature view. On the section 106, again, good to see broader community engagement, and I hope the football club is successful in its ambition, should this site go ahead. Wychwood Place, as you've already mentioned, following the site visit, is totally unsuitable for construction access. I've 50 years experience in doing this, and just the cost of providing traffic marshals would outweigh anything else. Never mind the site manager would be bald if he had to get his traffic in through there. And so it's great to see the informative for construction access, hopefully through Hurst Farm, and I would certainly encourage the developer to pursue that with vigour. The management plan is useful. It's great to see also the community heart, bandstand and community orchard. And I really hope that they will survive the detail stage, because I think they are important as you build new communities. And finally, I do not believe the adverse impacts of this scheme outweigh the benefits, and therefore I support the application. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Bates.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd actually like to move that we refuse this application, basically because of the access issue, that we're prepared to ask for a construction access to Hurst Farm. Why not make it a permanent arrangement? The two sites are separated by, fortunately, the Huntsland path, and unfortunately in Hayward Sea we savaged an ancient bridle path by driving roads through it. So that's why we've got two separate sites defined, and that's good. But I cycled back along that road. Despite what the engineer says from the county, that generates speed, and it's too narrow at the point coming onto Turners Hill Road. So I would like to see a rethink on the access via Hurst Farm or some other arrangement, but not to have all of the extra housing using the existing roadway. And basically, other than that, the layout and that's fine, and the developer, but it's just the access, and therefore I would like to see that refused unless we have a condition that says definitely permanent Hurst Farm access.
Yeah, well, I would refer you to the informative, but would either of you like to make a comment?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'll perhaps kick off, and then Ian can add if required. I mean, in terms of the access into the site, I think we've probably got to separate out the construction access and how the site is constructed if planning permission was granted, versus just the access to serve the development itself. And in terms of the development itself, there is no highway evidence in terms of the local highway authority to say that the access arrangement is so unsafe or would cause a severe impact, which is obviously the test in policy and the MPPF. So we have to look at the technical evidence that's been presented in terms of the geometry of that existing road, and that's as set out in the committee report, and there isn't an objection to the application. If it wasn't acceptable on that technical basis, then there would be an objection. So I think we have to look at that the evidence, because as we know, if the application is refused, we have to be able to substantiate each and every reason for refusal. And I think we know that planning inspectors will give significant weight to the views of the local highway authority, as they're the statutory body that are responsible for the road network. So without an objection from that body, it becomes very difficult, verging on the impossible, to substantiate reasons for refusal relating to highway matters. So I think we need to separate those two things out, and in terms of the construction, were permission to be granted, the onus is on the applicant to provide satisfactory details in the construction management plan, and whether that's using the existing road network or accessing it through Hurst Farm, the onus is on them to demonstrate that there's sufficient quality and in that construction management plan for it to be approved. If it isn't, then we won't discharge the condition and they won't be able to build the development. So the onus is firmly on the applicant at that point.
Thank you. Ian, do you wish to add anything to that?
Oh, I'm good. Sorry, Chairman. Stop flashing green now. There's probably no more I can add, Chairman. I think the council's views on the which replace access are, as I say, are well documented in the comments made. I have visited the site. I do fully appreciate the concerns being raised, but the matter is, it does guidance, and the bar, as Mr. King said on several occasions, the bar set by the MPPF is so high in terms of having a severe and unacceptable safety impact, it's going to be very difficult to raise a highway objection on that basis. Thank you.
Thank you. Anne Biggs, I wish you
Thank you,
make
Chair.
some comments.
Yeah, just to add to that, in terms of the aside from the highway the highway response, that we do have this informative that the applicants have agreed to show that they will explore other options for the construction access. But the point is that we can't have a condition to require that, because that's not land within their ownership. But there needs to be a planning permission on this site before they can go ahead and explore other options for construction access. So refusing the application on those grounds wouldn't necessarily achieve that goal that, as per Councillor Bates. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sweatman.
Oh, thank you, Chairman. Yes, I think what we're looking at here today is actually means of access, and as we've heard, that highways have no objection to the access into Wychwood, then we have no real reason to refuse that. However, when we visited the site, I was seriously concerned, as with other members, that the construction traffic going through there on such narrow roads was, to me, quite horrendous, but that can be dealt with under the construction management plan. What I am pleased to hear in the informatives is that what would be the most sensible decision to come to, or the more common sense one, is that you're looking into investigating the possibility of attaining access via Hurst Farm, So that would be absolutely ideal. And I know we're not making a decision on that today, but it would seem to be even more common sense if that was made into a permanent site in permanent access into that development at the northern end. So, yeah, thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Whittaker.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Gibson mentioned my name in dispatches about section 106 on another site, but I just want to, for the public, lots been mentioned about the benefits here, which are substantial. Just list out what those financial contributions are. These figures were prepared by Mr. King, which was circulated to all of the committee last week. So, primary this is for both sites for the combined this phase and the previous one. Primary education 1.7 million, secondary education 1.7 million, sixth form 350,000, library 175,000, NHS 326,000, SAM 234,000, sport 303,000, community buildings 305,000, local community infrastructure 216,000. So that totals 5.33 million. So that is significant and welcome, I think, by the local community, as Councillor Williams, I think, stated with others. So I think just for the record, it's just worth stating what those figures are, subject to the final mix, if this gets approval and a reserved matters application.
Thank you. Are there any other councillors that wish to make comments?
Recommend approval, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Sweatman. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Jackson, thank you very much. Right, can we move to the vote, please? Right, the vote is closed. 8 in favour, none against, and 3 abstentions. Therefore, the recommendation is passed. Right. Moving on to item 8, questions pursuant of Council Procedure Rule 10.2, due notice of which has been given. I have none. I thank members, officers, and also members of the public for their attendance and their patience this afternoon, and declare the meeting closed at 5:01. Can I ask you to remain seated until the live stream is turned off, please? The live stream is now ended. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.